We are going to begin by going over Tuesday's independent practice assignment. Tuesday, you were assigned something in Mastery Connect, and most of you guys did very well. I've been looking at your data from it. It was Tuesday's independent practice as shown on your screen. It was labeled with Tuesday's date, and we're going to check together today. So you guys read something that's had two different accounts, okay? Account 1 and account 2, and you can see that on your screen. And then you also had some questions to answer about those two short texts. The first one says, which of the following accounts is a first-hand account? Cam, I'm noticing you can't see, so I would encourage you to log out and come back in. And I'm sorry that you're having trouble. All right, so I'm looking for number 1. Which of the following accounts is a first-hand and is a first-hand account? So I have to read it to know. Account 1. My heart was beating so fast, the palms of my hands were beginning to sweat. The roar of the crowd was causing me to become more excited as every moment blank. As I stepped up onto the stage, I could see all of the faces in the audience staring back at me. I was actually going to be performing for a crowd of over 3,000 blank. Would my voice crack? Would I forget all of my lines? There were so many thoughts racing through my mind. As I took the mic and strummed that first note, a sudden calm came over my body, and the words began to just flow out of my mouth like water out of a jar. Before I knew it, the crowd was cheering and shouting for a blank. Good. And an encore is when they're asking him to do it again. Let's look at account 2. When people think of country music, the first name that comes to mind is Garth Brooks. Garth was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1962. When he was a young man, he showed a great talent for sports. When he was in college, he started to sing at clubs and other events. In 1987, he moved to Nashville, Tennessee. His first attempt at getting into the music business was unsuccessful, but Garth didn't give up. He kept working hard, and eventually his dedication paid off. He is now famous with many hit songs, and his voice has changed country music forever. Okay, so I'm thinking about which of the following accounts is a first-hand account. I'm noticing, when I think about one of them, I'm noticing it is a personal experience. I'm also noticing I can confirm that by looking at some of the clue words like I, but more importantly, I know it's personal because it's actually being written by the musician. So I'm thinking about which one is first-hand, and I'm noticing account 1 is personal, making it a first-hand account. So I think I need to choose A on this one when I'm thinking about the first-hand account. If you agree with A as the best answer to number 1, would you type I agree in the chat bar? Good. So now I'm thinking about number 2. Which of the following accounts is a second-hand account? Well, going back to the text, I'm noticing account 2 is a second-hand account, making B my best answer. If you agree with that, say, yes ma'am, in your chat feature. Good. Let's look at number 3. What do both of the accounts have in common with one another? What do they both have in common with one another? A, they both talked about famous songs that the singer had written. B, both passages were first-hand accounts. C, both accounts were about someone who is a singer. Or D, both passages were second-hand accounts. Well, there's two I can immediately eliminate, leaving me with the 50-50 strategy. We've already decided that they were not both first or both second-hand accounts. So I now have A or C left. So I'm thinking now about the best answer. A, they both talked about famous songs that the singer had written, or C, both accounts were about someone who is a singer. Well, if I have to choose the strongest one, I think it has to be C. A, one of the accounts did not talk about a famous song, leaving me with the best answer. All right, so now I'm thinking about number 4. What inference could be made from account number 1? A, performing in front of a large audience can be scary. B, Garth Brooks was born in the city of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Well, I already know that B came from account number 2. And I can confirm that by going back to the text, where I'm noticing that it tells me here, Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1962. So I'm noticing that's account 2 when I'm thinking about the best answer to this one. This question is asking me about account number 1. So I'm going to cross out answer choice B. Look at C. Nashville, Tennessee is the home of country music. Well, this is information that's right there in the text. It's not information that is an inference. So I'm noticing it asked me about an inference. So I'm going to go ahead and cross out C, leaving me with the 50-50 strategy. A, performing in front of a large audience can be scary. This is an inference for sure. And since I've already eliminated B and C, I can now eliminate D, all of the above, because it is definitely not an inference, and if B and C are wrong, then D can't be right as well, leaving me with A as the best answer. All right, look at number 5. What information is the focus of account number 2? The focus. Okay, so I'm thinking this is kind of a lot like a main idea. It's what's important. A, the account talks about a singer's experience performing for a large crowd. I'm thinking this is account number 1. So I might need to eliminate it. B, the account gives a brief summary about the life of Garth Brooks. A summary about his life? Account number 2? Maybe. C, the account tells what you need to do to write a song. Nope, I can cross that one out immediately. D, the focus is what sports Garth Brooks played in high school. There was nothing about sports, so I now have the 50-50 strategy, thinking about the focus of account number 2. A, the account talks about a singer's experience performing for a large crowd. Well, we've already brainstormed that was more like account 1, leaving me with B as the best answer. Thank you, Marley, for your feedback. You might want to log out and come back in. And thank you, Miss Hogue is giving a great tip for anybody that can only see my profile icon, so please follow her steps. All right, let's keep going. We're almost finished with our independent practice review. Number 6, what is the main difference between the two accounts? Main difference. Something that's different or not the same. A, account 1 is a second hand and account 2 is a first hand. Okay, well, I'm remembering we've already decided that account 1 was first hand, so I'm going to cross out A. B, account 1 tells about how a singer felt during a performance they gave, and account 2 describes a famous country singer's life. Maybe. I'm going to leave it open. C. The accounts are nearly the same and there is no major difference. Well, this is not true. And now D. Account 1 talks about what you need to do to be a successful musician, and account number 2 describes the city of Nashville. Well, account number 2 is not really about Nashville, Tennessee, leaving me with the strongest answer of B. One more, guys and girls. Number 7. Which account tells readers more about Garth Brooks' feelings and emotions while performing on stage? Well, if I'm wanting to know more about feelings, I'm thinking about only one account was personal. It was a first-hand account, and that is A. B was not personal. C doesn't make sense. And D would not be right if B is not right, leaving me with A. Very good. Thank you for reviewing our independent practice from Tuesday. There will be an independent practice assignment today after our lesson. So we're going to focus again today on comparing and contrasting first-hand and second-hand accounts. We started this Tuesday, and we focused on what is the difference between a first-hand or a second-hand account. And we already know that a first-hand account is something that's a primary source. It describes something from where the author is actually writing it based on his or her experience. Where a second-hand account or a secondary source is an event based on research. The author wasn't present, and we have some common examples. Tuesday, I gave you guys some great questions you can ask yourself. Questions like, who wrote the account? And was the author present when the event happened? This will help us to determine if it's a first-hand or a second-hand account. Today, I want you to notice that we have some important similarities and differences about point of view, but when you're analyzing multiple accounts, they can be written in first-hand accounts sometimes and sometimes second-hand accounts. So you have to look for what is the same and what is different. That's important when we're understanding the meaning of the accounts. So it's not just about understanding the pronouns used or which one is first-hand, which one is second-hand, but also understanding what is the same and what is different based on the type of point of view used, or if it's a first-hand account, what makes it different than if it's a second-hand account? And why do you think the author described or told the events or topics differently? Which one is more personal? Which one is more informational? And that's going to be our focus today. So let's go ahead and warm up our brains. And as we're thinking, we're going to begin with passage A. And you are going to be using your chat feature when you hear my code word. So as you're reading with me, I would like for you to fill in the blank. Hundreds of people turned out to watch the Stanton School fall to the ground last Thursday blank. The school had been a landmark in Stanton since 1917 and had felt the footsteps of thousands of students and teachers over the past century. One person, not in attendance to see the stately old building crumble, was Margaret Wise, a 1934 graduate of the school. I couldn't bear to watch it being blank. I just have too many fond memories in that building, Wise said. Wise recalled the day a small fire was ignited while her science teacher performed an experiment for the class. The first-year teacher panicked and directed his class to exit through the third-floor fire escape door, while he stayed behind to put out the blank. It was raining cats and dogs, and the metal stairs were quite slippery. Bert Camphy was at the back of the line and slipped on a stair. All 18 of us in line went down like dominoes. It was terrifying at the time, but now, of course, it's become a fond memory. Using your chat feature, when you hear my code word, I would like for you to type the answer, first-hand account or second-hand account. COVID-19. I'm noticing several people have already answered. I'm noticing a lot of people felt this was a secondhand account. Okay, let's go ahead and look at passage B and think about, is this one firsthand or secondhand? Please fill in my blank using your chat feature. When I heard that the old Stanton School was going to be demolished, I felt a mixture of emotions. Mostly, I felt sad. I graduated from the school in 1934 and watched my 4 children graduate from there as well. After talking to my children and many other past students at Stanton School, I have discovered that I am not alone in my blank of sadness. Everyone, it seems, has forgotten experiences that happened in that stately old building. One of my own memorable experiences happened in science class during my junior year. Mr. Jones was a first year teacher and was constantly performing science experiments in front of the class, which happened to be on the 3rd floor of the school. On this blank day, a small fire was blank. Mr. Jones panicked and directed everyone to leave through the emergency exit door. We were trying to quickly make our way down the metal fire escape, but it was raining cats and dogs and the stairs were quite slippery. Good. So now I'm thinking about, is this firsthand or secondhand? COVID-19. I'm noticing several people writing this was a first-hand account, and you are right. This is a first-hand account. And now I'm thinking about, how are these two accounts different? And I'm going to ask Will to unmute his volume and tell the class, how are these two passages different? I want you to know that Will gave us some great ideas about which passage had different information in it based on the account that was told. Passage B is definitely more personal. This person lived it and experienced what it was like, and talked about her own memorable personal experience and how it made her feel emotional about watching it being demolished or torn down. So that first-hand account was much more personal because it happened to the author, making it more meaningful than basic research. Guys and girls, I need you to remember to stay muted while I'm teaching. Okay, so let's go ahead and think about this text called The Unsinkable Titanic by Julian Green. As I'm reading, you're going to notice that I've underlined some things in blue. These are clues that tell you whether this is a first-hand or second-hand account. And after we finish reading, we're going to look closer at, is this a first-hand or a second-hand account? So please use your chat feature to fill in my blank as we read together. The Unsinkable Titanic by Julian Green. For more than 100 years, the story of the Titanic has fascinated blank. It was the largest passenger steamship ever built, already world famous when it was launched. One magazine proudly called it unsinkable, but that pride would crumble on Titanic's first voyage across the Atlantic blank. There were 2,240 passengers and crew on that voyage. The ship left Southampton, England on April 10, 1912. It was scheduled to reach New York City 10 days later, but at 11:30 on the night of April 14th, the Titanic hit an iceberg that tore open the ship's massive hull. As the vessel took on water, it began to sink. Paragraph 3. The ship's captain told his radio operator to call for help. Then he ordered the crew to lower the lifeboats. In the panic, fleeing passengers launched most of the boats with several empty seats. By 2:20 the next morning, 3 hours after striking the iceberg, the Titanic had sunk. Another ship, the Blank, was 58 miles away when it received the distress call. The Carpathia rushed to rescue the survivors. Only 705 people were saved. Paragraph 4. Newspaper headlines around the world noticed the loss of the unsinkable ship. It quickly became the subject of countless books and films. In fact, the first Titanic movie appeared just a month later, starring one of the survivors, British and American officials tried to discover the causes of the disaster. They looked at everything from the way the ship was built to the actions of the crew. In the end, the main lesson of the Titanic was that no ship is truly unsinkable. And I'm noticing in that photograph is a picture of the Titanic. So let's notice some of those blue underlying clues that can help us. I'm going to give you a moment to look at a couple of those now that we've read it. One thing that surprised me is how they released several boats, or they called them, they were rescue boats or lifeboats, and they released them when they weren't full because they were in a panic. So those are seats that people could have been in that might have even saved their lives, but because they panicked, they released the lifeboats before they were full. And I'm thinking about how that applies to how today we could panic, or we could use tools that we've been given to remain calm. And that is definitely something we should always thrive and strive to do. Okay, so now we're going to think about this text, and we're going to think about which is it firsthand, is it secondhand, and how does that tell us more about the information being shared. So let's look at number 1. Number 1 says, who would write a firsthand account about the sinking of the Titanic? And then the second part of number 1 says, who would write a secondhand account? And I'm thinking about in a first-hand account, a writer describes the experience, whereas in a second-hand account, the writer focuses on reporting many different details about the event. Okay, so I'm thinking a person who witnessed the sinking of the Titanic would be someone that would write a first-hand account. They witnessed it. They were there. It was real. I'm noticing that Ms. Hogue is giving us some reminders. She's right, we're only using the chat feature when I've given you directions to do so. Thank you, Ms. Hogue. So now I'm thinking about who would write a secondhand account. Well, I'm thinking this would be a person who only heard or read about the sinking of the Titanic. Cam, please mute your volume now. And now I'm thinking about number 2. It says, reread the magazine article. Do you think this is a first-hand or second-hand account? Find evidence in the selection to support what you think. Well, I'm thinking it is a second-hand account. The author states that people have been fascinated by the sinking of the Titanic for more than 100 years. This was one of the evidence pieces that I underlined. I'm also thinking that they must be writing about an event in the past, so they didn't witness it, and he wanted to inform readers about what happened and what lesson can be learned, making it evidence to back up that it is a secondhand account. Thank you for looking at that model with me. So let's go ahead and look at a writing prompt now. Let's think about, is this prompt narrative, races, or Oreo? I'm going to ask you to listen for my code word, and then you will use the chat feature to answer this green question. What kind of writing prompt is this? But please do not answer until you hear my code word. Here's our prompt. How would the facts in paragraphs 2 and 3 of the passage differ if a passenger on the Titanic described the disaster? So how would it be different? Think about what type of prompt is this? COVID-19. I'm noticing several people have responded. We have a lot of different answers today. Races, Oreo, narrative. How would the facts in paragraphs 2 and 3 of the passage differ if a passenger on the Titanic described the disaster? Well, I'm noticing some of us are unsure, and I want you to know that this is a racist type of writing. And some of us responded that way. So it's asking us to write an informative piece about how it would be different. So it's asking us to restate, answer, cite, explain, and sum it up. Now, this one was a little tricky because you might think it's asking you how you feel or how the author felt, which could be Oreo, but it wasn't asking you how you felt about it. It was asking how it would be different, making it racist. I want to remind you as we're looking at this writing prompt, we have some steps to success that we use in class where we break down the prompts with a do what T chart. We read the text or reread it in this case. We plan with a 4-square graphic organizer. We type our rough draft and then we revise and edit with arms cups and most importantly, that writing rubric. And we have that in our interactive notebook. Looks like this. So now let's go ahead and look closer at another text about the same topic called The Sinking of the Titanic by James McGough in Sinking of the Titanic and Great Sea Disasters. Fill in my blank, please. Paragraph 1. As the lifeboats pulled away, the officers boarded the bands to play, and their music did much to quell panic. It was a heartbreaking sight to see the great ship go down. First, she listed to the starboard on which side the collision had occurred. Then she settled slowly but steadily, without hope of remaining blank. Paragraph 2. The Titanic was all aglow with the lights as if for a function. First, we saw the lights of the lower deck snuffed out. A while later, and the second deck illumination was extinguished in a similar manner. Then the third and upper decks were blank, and without plunging or rocking, the great ship disappeared slowly from the surface of the sea. Paragraph 3. The sea was calm as the water in a tumbler, but it was freezing cold. None had dressed heavily, and all, therefore, suffered intensely. The women did not shriek or grow hysterical, while we waited through the awful night for help. The men stood at the oars, stood because there was no room for us to sit, and kept the boat headed into the Sewell to prevent her capsizing. Another boat was at our side, but all the others were scattered around the water. Paragraph 4. Finally, shortly before 6 o'clock, we saw the lights of the Carpathia approaching. Gradually, she picked up the survivors in the other boats and then blank us. Good, approached us. So I'm noticing some things underlined that might help us think about if this is a first-hand or a second-hand account. And I'm noticing it says, gradually she picked up the survivors, thinking about that other ship. Here's some of the other things you can see that have been underlined. First, we saw the lights. I'm thinking about how different this one was. So I'm going to do that for you now. Give you a minute to think about the best answer. Listen for my code word. I'm going to go back to the question for you now that you've had a chance to look at the memoir. So let's go ahead and look at a couple of questions about this text. Starting with the number 1. Please listen for my code word before you type anything in your chat. Number 1. The facts in the magazine article on page 246 came from earlier news reports and articles about the event. In the memoir on page 248, where did James McGough get his facts? A. He read about the events in the magazine article. B. He heard about the events from friends on the ship. C. He imagined the events and wrote a story about them. D. He experienced the events as they happened. When you hear my code word this week, you will type either letter A, B, C, or D in your chat feature. 5, 4, 3, 2, COVID-19. I'm noticing some people are writing a question mark because they're just not sure, and I think that's a great way to answer. I see a lot of people choosing D. They think he might have experienced the events as they happened. We're going to talk about which one is best in just a minute. Let's look at number 2. Which information did McGaw give that was not in the article? A. The Carpathia traveled to the Titanic's location. B. Passengers were put into lifeboats. C. The lights on the Titanic went out deck by deck. D. The Titanic sank into the ocean. Which information did McGaw give that was not in the article? And since this one's asking me for information, we might need to go back to the text. Ready in 5? Ready in 4? A, B, C, or D in 3, 2, COVID-19. I see a lot of different answers on this one. We're going to discuss what the best answer is, and then we're going to look at number 3. So let's look at the best answers. If you chose D on number 1, you had the best answer, and I saw a lot of people chose D. Number 2's best answer was C. So which information did McGaw give that was not in the article? Well, the lights on the Titanic were out deck by deck. This information. He added it. So that's something that was different. And now let's look at number 3 together. These are words and phrases that are clues to how McGaw feels on the night that the Titanic sank. So here are some that would give us clues about how he feels. Heartbreaking, without hope, and awful night. This is giving us information that gives us a clue about if it's a first-hand or second-hand account. Let's look at this one. This one's called To Space and Back by Sally Ride. Fill in my blank, please. Launch minus 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7. The 3 launch engines light. The shuttle shakes and strains at the bolts holding it to the launch pad. The computers check the engines. It isn't up to us, blank. The computers will decide whether we launch. Paragraph 2. 3, 2, 1. The rockets light. The shuttle leaps off the launch pad in a cloud of steam and a trail of fire. Inside, the ride is rough and loud. Our heads are rattling around inside our helmets. We can barely hear the voices from Mission Control in our headsets above the thunder of the rockets and engines. For an instant, I wonder if everything is working blank. But there's no time to wonder and no time to be scared. Paragraph 3. In only a few seconds, we zoom past the clouds. 2 minutes later, the rockets burn out, and with a brilliant whitish-orange blank, they fall away from the shuttle as it streaks on toward space. Suddenly, the ride becomes very, very smooth and quiet. The shuttle is still attached to the big tank, and the launch engines are pushing us out of Earth's blank. The sky is black. All we see of the trail of fire behind us is a faint, pulsating glow through the top blank. And that last word is window. Good. Okay, so I'm now thinking about, is this a first-hand or second-hand account? Don't answer yet. As we're moving, what's next? We're not finished reading this text, but I want to remind you that we're only using the chat feature when a teacher has asked you to. And I saw Ms. Hogue remind us of that, and I'm reminding us of that as well. Paragraph 4. Fill in my blank. Launch plus 6 minutes. The force pushing us against the backs of our seats steadily increases. We can barely move because we're being held in place by a force of 3 G's, 3 times the force of gravity we feel on blank. At first, we don't mind it. We've all felt much more than that when we've done acrobats in our jet training airplanes, but that lasted only a few seconds, and this seemed to go on forever. After a couple of minutes of 3 G's, we're uncomfortable, straining to hold our books on our laps and craning our necks against the force to read the instruments. I find myself wishing we'd hurry up and get into orbit. Paragraph 5. Launch plus 8 1/2 minutes. Cam, I have muted you several times. I need you to stay muted. I'm going to start with paragraph 5. Launch plus 8 1/2 minutes. The launch engines cut off. Suddenly, the force is gone, and we lurch forward in our seats. During the next few minutes, the empty fuel tank drops away and falls to Earth, and we are very busy getting the shuttle ready to enter orbit. But we're not too busy to notice that our books and pencils are floating in mid-air. We're in blank. Good, and that last word is space. Thank you for filling in my blank. Now I'm noticing the next title says, This Day in History, June 18th, 1983, Memorable Milestones Space Shuttle Missions. Fill in my blank, paragraph 1. A crowd of about 250,000 gathered early that bright June morning at Cape Canaveral, Florida, many wearing Ride Sally Ride t-shirts. Across the blank, many others also watched and waited. Suddenly, the engines ignited and smoke and steam billowed across the site. Then, booster rockets lifted the huge space shuttle slowly into the air. Gathering speed, the Challenger blasted off into orbit for its second mission. Paragraph 2. At the same moment, one crew member, Mission Specialist Sally K. Ride, was rocketing into history. Ride was America's first woman to travel into space. Sally Ride had learned the right to be aboard the space shuttle. A physicist, she had been in astronaut training for 6 years. She had also worked on mission control, relaying messages to shuttle crews during earlier shuttle flights. Ride had even helped develop a robotic blank to use in space. This knowledge and experience had led Captain Bob Crippen to choose her as a crew member, and Ride was ready for the blank. In just over 8 minutes, launch engines were lifting Challenger to its 184-mile-high orbit. During the ascent, Ride acted as flight engineer, calling out checklists to the pilots. She also joked with Mission Control about the exciting ride. Paragraph 4. Once in blank, the 5 astronauts wasted little time. In the busy days ahead, the crew completed a number of experiments. This included radar and a high-resolution camera to study the Earth's atmosphere. Ride helped launch 2 blank satellites. She also became the first woman to operate the shuttle's robotic arm by releasing a satellite into orbit. Okay, so let's think about a couple of questions based on these 2 accounts. Both are on the same topic, and we're going to think about how they're different. Number 1. This question has 2 parts. First, answer part A, then answer part B. Part A. Which statement best describes the differences between the two accounts from To Space and Back and Memorable Milestones Space Shuttle Missions? A. One is the news article. The other is from an eyewitness who watched the launch. B. Both are written by people who were at Cape Canaveral on June 18, 1983. C. One was written at the time of the launch, the other was written several years later. D. One is based only on facts, the other on facts and personal experience. Using your chat feature when you hear the word COVID-19, I would like for you to answer. Ready in 5, 4, 3, 2, COVID-19. Let's go ahead and look at the best answer to number 1. If you chose D, you are correct. One is based only on facts. The other is based on facts and personal experiences. And now I want you to know why and how I know that. Look at part B. Write a sentence from each passage that supports your answer to part A. So I'm trying to back up. One is based only on facts. The other is based on facts and personal experiences. Well, in To Space and Back, it says our heads are rattling around inside our helmets. That's personal. And Memorable Milestones, Ride was America's first woman to travel into space. That's facts. Proving D as the strongest answer. Let's go ahead and look at this one. Which phrase from Memorable Milestones, Space Shuttle's mission, helps the reader understand the meaning of the word ascent in paragraph 3? So going back to the text, ascent means lifting the Challenger or going into space, going up. And that's just a review of context clues. Cam, we will not be using words like shut up, that breaks the social contract, and you are not allowed to type that in the chat bar. If you choose to break the social contract, I'll be contacting somebody at home. That's your choice. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue. Next, we have Sam, I'm talking to Cam for the comment he typed in the chat feature. Let's look at number 3. Complete the chart to compare and contrast the different accounts of the same event. I'll be writing an X in the box next to the detail that describes the two different texts. So the first one says, which text describes the launch of the space shuttle? Is it To Space and Back? Is it Memorable Milestones? Or is it both? The second one says, explains how the launch affects the author's body. Which one does it or both? The third one tells why the mission was unlike other missions. And the next one presents all events as taking place in the past or presents events as if they're taking place now. So let's look at which of these do that. Both of these texts describe the launch of a space shuttle. Only the first text, called To Space and Back, explains how the launch affects the author's body. Only Memorable Milestones tells why the mission was unlike other missions. Only the second text presents all events as taking place in the past. And only the first text presents events as if they're taking place now. And if you were solving this one by yourself, you would go back to the text to solve that chart. All right, guys. Now that we've reviewed together, I want you to know that you do have an independent practice assignment. It is located in Google Classroom, and you are expected to complete it today. You'll notice it has Thursday's date. Today is 4/2/20. So you'll click this under Virtual Learning. Now, I also want to remind you that I've added some mindfulness tools, and I want to encourage you to begin practicing those today if you can. If not, tomorrow. They are optional, but they would be helpful during this time. So today's required assignment, expected assignment, independent practice, when you click on it, is a Mastery Connect code. And remember, you'll click the one into Mastery Connect that matches your homeroom. Looks like this. and you'll do that today. It is expected to be completed today, and yes, Marley, we always go over our independent work. I do want you guys to join me. Tomorrow's Friday. Remember last week we started a chapter book study of the book Holes. We'll also be doing some mindfulness activities and doing an academic vocabulary game. So tomorrow will be fun, and I want to encourage you to join me. So at this time, if you don't have a question and you know what to go do for your independent assignment, you may log off. If you need to speak to me for any reason,